The Minnesota Vikings did what everybody had been asking them to do. They got Brian Flores signed to an extension. But that doesn't mean he's going to be here next year. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about some of the back end stuff that could affect the Vikings getting compensatory draft picks, what it means and what language is still having everybody, even the experts, confused. Talk about Jordan Addison trade rumor, which I'm sure you've heard about already. And we're going to do a 3-round mock draft breaking down just players who would be day one contributors, not potential, day one starters. Welcome to the Real Forno Show.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Real Forno Show, hosted by the one and only Tyler Forness. A to Z Sports sought him out to be their Minnesota Vikings reporter and NFL analyst. And he's a proud contributor over at SKOL North's Purple Daily. Tyler is also the captivating host of The Good, The Bad, and The Hungry on the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network, and a founding member of Vikings First and SKOL.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Real Forno Show. I'm your host, Tyler Forness. With me, as always, in the top left corner is producer Dave. We have a lot to talk about tonight. The Vikings always find a way to keep us busy and having good discussions. We're going to talk about Brian Flores' extension, what it means from every angle. We're going to talk about a Jordan Addison trade rumor that a 49ers beat reporter dropped some sources on. And we're also going to talk about a 3-round mock draft of just players who can contribute on day one. We're not talking about developmental guys, just day one contributors, because honestly, that might be what this team needs more than anything. So let's just get right down to brass tacks. Brian Flores officially signed an extension on Wednesday night. And of course, it broke while I was at the gym, so we were unable to jump on live. And it's an interesting talking point about this extension because, one, he did sign a deal. I was told it is a multi-year deal, and it is a very, very expensive contract. I don't have the official numbers, but I was told it was for a lot of money. And not only that, but Brian Flores still may not return to the Minnesota Vikings because it is a defensive coordinator contract, which means if the Pittsburgh Steelers offer him the head coaching job, he can still take it and go. Right now, I believe that job is trending toward Chris Shula, the Los Angeles Rams defensive coordinator. We'll find out what exactly happens there. Nothing is set in stone at this point. They can't even officially meet with Shula again until Monday, the day after the NFC Championship game when the Rams travel to Seattle to take on Sam Darnold's Seahawks. So we are still waiting on that. But just to have the certainty that he will not go anywhere else and be a defensive coordinator is a huge weight off of Vikings fans' shoulders. And it's a huge weight off of the Vikings' shoulders because they were honest about wanting him to come back right away. They were just straight up, we want Flores back. We don't want to mess around, but we do believe that he has earned the right to test free agency. Here's where things get interesting. Tom Pelissero was on the Power Trip Morning Show on KFan this morning. He does it quite often. He lives locally, so he's one of us. And he said that they had agreed to terms on an extension before his contract expired, but he did not sign it until Wednesday night. So it took a week after his contract expired for him to sign it. So that raises a multitude of questions. It also raises some more questions revolving compensatory draft picks, which we'll get to here momentarily. Now, the fact that they agreed to the frameworks of an extension kind of means that, hey, I took it as the commander's job that he went and interviewed for was a formality. It wasn't real from Flores' perspective, but he wanted to go and take it. If he was really seeking out defensive coordinator positions, I think he would have had a lot more interviews and he would have had more substantial ones because he could have interviewed with the Green Bay Packers with Jeff Hafley taking the Miami Dolphins job. He could have interviewed with the Dallas Cowboys, who had been rumored to want him before the season even ended. He could have interviewed with the New York Jets, which why would he want to go there? That's an absolute disaster of an organization right now. And he could have interviewed with the New York Giants. There were a bevy of different options for him to choose from. And I'm sure other teams wanted to bring him in anyways, because it's Brian Flores and he runs one of the best defenses in football. But he didn't do that. He just went and talked to the Commanders. And from my perspective, that felt more like a fact-finding mission than he had serious interest to go to the Washington Commanders. And we see Durante Jones, he is flying all over. He's had interviews with, I believe, 4 teams now. And you just know they're not just interested in Durante Jones. They're interested in this defense because it is fantastic. So when it comes to Flores, he decides to come back home. And there were reports I had heard very similarly. John Krasinski of The Athletic on his podcast talked about how there was some tension in the building, but they weren't willing to talk about specifics. There were people talking about maybe like I kept getting mentions of something to do with an extramarital affair. I can assure you, I have heard nothing of the sort. I think unless you hear that from a concrete source, you should put that to bed. I don't think that's worth talking about. I don't think it's fair to the man Brian Flores is, unless it's coming from, hey, somebody like John Krasinski or Doogie or Ben Gessling. If they say it, then I think we can have that conversation. Until then, I think it's best that we put that aside for now. I had heard things that there was some tension in the building in a similar way to Krasinski did, but other than that, nothing out of the ordinary that you might look at and be like, hey, maybe we have an ethical dilemma here. Nothing of that sort. So Flores does decide to come back. So those issues either have been squared away or squared away enough where Flores said, okay, you're backing up the Brinks truck. I'll come back. We're good. And it raises another question. It raised a couple questions. First off being, what does this mean for how the Vikings are going to approach the offseason? Because with Brian Flores, there's a real chance with how this defense is currently constructed that, for lack of a better term, they ignore defense a little bit, especially in the draft, and they just draft a bunch of young players and they say, screw it, and we're just going to get vets on defense because we need smart, developed players to run this Flores scheme. And 2, what does it mean for the compensatory pick idea if Flores does decide to take the Pittsburgh Steelers job? So I wrote about it on Wednesday afternoon, about 5 hours before the news dropped that Flores was getting an extension and he was signing it, because I wanted to understand what this process was. I wanted to understand more about, hey, what do people around the league think? So I spoke to multiple people about this. And here I want to read this because this is from 2020 resolution JC-2A. And essentially this is the Rooney Rule edition for the comp picks. The employer club shall be eligible to receive this draft choice compensation if, 1, the minority employee hired as a head coach or primary football executive has been employed by the employer club for a minimum of 2 full seasons, and the minority employee is not the head coach or primary football executive of the employer club and is hired into the same position as a club. There can be no break of employment between clubs. That is the key phrase. There can be no break of employment between clubs. And there have been people saying, oh, that means his contract expired, it's done. That could be the case. But the problem is we don't know what that language means. We don't know that it means the break is the contract expires. We don't know that it means, hey, you just have to have a job before the new league year starts. It could be that as long as you're employed before kickoff on opening day. We don't know what that language means. And we may never know if Flores just returns as the defensive coordinator this year, because it's an unprecedented situation. We haven't had a scenario where a coach is running out of contract and will be a free agent, so to speak, and then would potentially net compensatory draft picks for their team. It would be a precedent-setting move by the NFL for whatever they decide. I do want to jump back here. Jackson gave us a super chat. Thank you very much. Says, I love the flows back. Now, if we can just get some competency at QB, we're going to get into that in a little bit, I promise. Because honestly, if Sam Darnold was at quarterback this year, this team was 12, 13, 14 games. Dead ass. I don't really think it's even a question at this point. But that's a story for a different day. We're going to have an in-depth McCarthy discussion here once we're kind of in that dead zone between Senior Bowl, which I'll be at next week, and the NFL Scouting Combine, because we're going to have some stuff that we can talk about there. But I want to turn you to something. I spoke with a salary cap expert. His name's John P. Gilbert, deputy editor of Field Goals, the SB Nation site for the Seattle Seahawks. And he is a law school graduate. So I don't know if he's a practicing lawyer, but he understands law and how things are written. He had a very interesting one, and it comes down to like employment status. And these kind of technicalities are what we could be dealing with when it comes to Brian Flores potentially netting compensatory draft picks. His response was, well, specifically, what is the normal termination time for access to systems in the facilities for a terminated employee? And did Flores openly maintain continuous access to facilities and systems as if he were still employed? Did they deactivate and demand the return of any IT assets? Were the employee benefits still active? And on and on. Basically, even if you don't have an active contract, that does not mean you're not an active employee. So what was that status? And I spoke with my managing editor, Charles Goldman at A to Z Sports, and he kind of relayed the same thing. It was like, well, if they didn't cancel all of that stuff, then hey, maybe he is going to net those compensatory draft picks. So it's a very interesting idea here. I did speak, and I had a couple sources tell me the same thing. They believe the Vikings would get draft picks because their understanding of the interpretation is, and this was mine as well, and I've said this multiple times, that you just need to be employed by the beginning of the new league year. And that is what constitutes the break of employment. Because if you take a year off, that's a break. So if you're employed by the start of the next league year, it's not a break of employment. So if he ends up taking the Steelers job, we'll see. I genuinely don't know. And Nick Cordy, who is the foremost expert on compensatory draft picks, says this. Regarding compensatory picks and Brian Flores' contract status, that is one way where I'll just wait and see what the league and insiders say. There's not really anything to reverse engineer that. It's up to 345 Park Avenue, where the league office is in Manhattan, as to whether or not they want to grant those picks. It's a very interesting situation. And we know how the NFL is. They almost crave this kind of drama. They crave when they can make the call, when they can make the decision. And it's fascinating.
And we all know which way it goes with the Minnesota Vikings.
It'll probably go, yeah,
but it's now moot, right?
Well, that's the thing. We don't know. And here's why we don't know if that's moot. And now, theoretically, because it was framed as an extension, it is moot. But if the contract expired on January 14th, and if what Pelissero says is true, which we have no reason to believe it's false, it's Tom Pelissero. The guy, he's a very credible source in this instance, okay? He said that Flores signed the contract yesterday, so January 21st. So if break of employment means you can't have any days off, and if they were to have asked for his credentials back, asked for like the tablet, his parking pass, his ID to scan and get in the building. I don't know how they get in the building, if it's a passcode or if it's like an ID badge. Like I have an ID badge when I want to go to the gym. However they get in the building. If those credentials are stripped, is that the break of employment? The problem is, even though it feels, Dave, like we have an answer, we still are left with more questions because he agreed to the extension, but then he didn't sign it for a week. Yeah, there's still enough vagueness there to where the NFL can look at the words break of employment and say, no, you're screwed. And that really would suck. But this is probably, it's probably all going to be a moot point because I think Brian Flores is coming back. It wouldn't shock me. It wouldn't have shocked me if they just signed him to an extension on like, I don't know, the 10th of January, but he would have they knew he was going to get a head coaching job and it was just like a posturing kind of thing. And also leverage for Flores, be like, hey, I have a job. I don't need you. And then maybe he can leverage them for more money. And then you can do that kind of thing. That wouldn't have shocked me in the slightest. But this tells me that Flores is serious about returning. He's been very open about the fact that he loves it in Minnesota. His family loves it. His wife specifically loves it. And they've been here for 3 years. So there are a lot of different reasons why you would want to have that. Why do you want to stay here? So I'm excited to have him back. I also think this changes potentially what we're going to see in the NFL draft, which we're going to get to when we talk about our 3-round mock draft. And we're only doing 3 because we're specifically talking guys who can contribute now. And that's the approach we're going to take with that mock draft. It's quite an interesting situation that the Minnesota Vikings have right now. And I'm very excited about it. I'm very excited to see what they do. I'm very excited to see how they go about things. And overall, Dave, we're in a great spot for this Minnesota Vikings team.
I think one of the reasons he wanted to stay is he enjoys the winter weather.
God, I'm so excited to not leave my house tomorrow when it's negative 51 wind chills at 6 a.m. This is why I'm glad I work from home and I don't have to drive to the liquor store anymore. I used to manage a liquor store. I'm not an alcoholic, I promise. So let's shift the conversation because we're going to get back to some of the Flores stuff in a little bit. Let's talk about Jordan Addison. And this is a very interesting one. The story comes from Grant Cohn, who is the Sports Illustrated writer for the Seattle Seahawks. He is their publisher. And if you don't know kind of how Sports Illustrated kind of does their stuff now, they have a designated publisher and then they hire writers and all that kind of stuff. So Grant Cohn, his dad was a longtime San Francisco sports writer, so he's been ingrained in the market for a long time. Says that sources tell him that the 49ers want to make a big trade, and they either have had talks or are going to have talks regarding a trade for Jordan Addison. Here's where things get really interesting. It's not crazy that Addison's name is being mentioned in trade talks. He's just finished year 3. And even if you completely take out the off the field stuff, just from an on field and salary cap perspective, it's easy for teams and analysts to be like, hey, maybe Jordan Addison's a trade candidate because maybe they don't want to pay him $25 to $30 million a year. This is before the off field stuff, and that just complicates it, right? So this is where I think things get really interesting. Not only did Cohn say, according to a source, the 49ers tend to be quite aggressive, and the wide receiver they're initially targeting in a trade is Jordan Addison. This is where things get really weird and why I have a lot of questions. He says, Addison is entering year 4 in the NFL, and the Vikings apparently don't want to pick up his 5th-year option. They like Jalen Naylor, who's going to be a free agent. They'd like to keep him, and since they're not going to pick up Jordan Addison's 5th-year option, they would be open to trading him. That is the most interesting part of this whole conversation. And now remember, when it comes to sourced information, we have to remember a couple things. One, anytime you get sourced information that's not like direct right from the top, then whoever's reporting it can potentially misrepresent it unintentionally. It's like when you're in high school and rumors start. Oh, Susie kissed Tommy. And then all of a sudden, by the time it gets to you, it turns into something completely different, right?
Yeah, Susie did a little bit more than kiss Tommy.
Yeah, and Tommy apparently was wearing clown makeup. Like, that's the kind of stuff that can happen with the rumor chain. And there's also the other factor here, 2 other factors. One, sources can be completely legit. Everything you hear from them is 100% factual. 2, some of it can be speculation and then reported as fact, and being able to decipher that. And some reporters are phenomenal at it. Some aren't so much. And then there's the other aspect of sources will use reporters to get their own agendas across. One of the more famous stories was Matt Miller, now of ESPN, was fed a bunch of stuff from the Chiefs saying that they were going to take a linebacker in the draft, but they were really targeting Mahomes. That posturing helped them get it done, right? So when it comes to source stuff, you have to look at all these factors.
And that doesn't mean the team could be looking for leaks as well.
Yep. That is also another factor. I'm not going to sit here and say that Grant Cohn is wrong or he's being fed a bunch of crap. This is where put on your media literacy hats and say, hey, are we sure? Are we sure that the Vikings don't want to give Jordan Addison that 5th-year option? It is worth $17.58 million. And I know a lot of people, especially in our chat, which we love how passionate you guys are, they don't want him back. They want him gone because he's a troublemaker. He is and this is paraphrasing the beliefs of what we see in the chat regularly. He's not trustworthy. He continues to get into trouble. He puts himself in bad situations. We've had the one citation for driving 140 on the freeway. We have two
but he was
arrests now.
taking care of his dog.
Yeah. Hey, listen, if I would be speeding too, if Odie or Marzipan needed me, you bet your ass I'd be speeding. I don't think I could get my Silverado to 140 though. I don't think I could. But you have the two arrests. One was for the alleged DUI that he pled guilty to wet reckless, which is a misdemeanor. Well, you know what? At least the car was parked, which I believe was the case. So there's that at least. And then the arrest in the Seminole Hard Rock Hotel and Casino Monday, the 12th, which those charges were dropped by the prosecutor on Tuesday. And Addison is planning on filing a civil suit. So I've seen a lot of comments. Oh, maybe don't be in a casino at, 3:30 in the morning. I don't know. Casinos are fun at 3:30 in the morning. You want to know why? Not a lot of people there. Those blackjack tables get pretty empty. I've been at Mystic Lake at like 3 in the morning. It's fun. It's great. Like you don't have to deal with a lot of crap. It's awesome, especially on like a Monday.
Just go to
those
Vegas.
Tables are wide open. Yeah,
they're open 24 hours.
I've never been to Vegas as a legal adult, so I'm hoping to get there. Hey, maybe we can get some more super chats. Let's send Forno to Vegas. But likewise, go ahead.
You forgot the whole missing the practice in England this year.
I'm getting there. I'm just talking about the legal stuff because then you have so I don't know if it was officially reported or what, but he missed a walkthrough Saturday morning when they were in London. That the Vikings suspended him for. But
his phone died. That happens to everybody.
No excuses. It's the NFL. There are clocks in every room.
To go visit the sites down in London.
No excuses. Like there are curfews that you need to be in bed by a certain time when you are on the road. No excuses.
I'm just saying, if you're going to trade him, you want to give them the most positive light possible.
Oh, you're just talking political spin. That's fair. That's fair. So even like that stuff is a factor here. And I'm going to be real with you. I'm not going to say I don't care about that stuff, but when it comes to an extension, it's not enough to sway me. I think when you look at the talent, and this past year was such an anomaly for everybody on offense that I'm willing to kind of not completely disregard it, but I'm willing to give it a pass because Justin Jefferson had an off year. The quarterback situation was dire and ugly. The offensive line had so many injury issues. And TJ Hawkinson was forced to chip on almost every time he ran a route. So his production was down. And I still disagree with people saying Hawkinson needs to go because I think when you watch the tape, when he's actually asked to run routes, yeah, he's pretty damn close to the same old Hawkinson before that ACL injury. So you get him doing what he's supposed to be doing, which is why you paid him. And I think Hawk is just fine. Mr. Pink says Addison's trending toward Antonio Brown. No. Come on. He's a 23-year-old kid who's making some mistakes, but he hasn't hurt anybody. And I think that's an important one. He's learning and hopefully he's figured it out. But with Addison, I would give him a deal close to the Devontae Smith contract, the Jameson Williams contract. 3 years between $25 and $30 million per. And if you do it now, you can spread it out over 5 years and really keep those cap hits minimal. And I think that would be the ideal scenario here if you want to extend him. I don't doubt that the Vikings want to keep Jalen Nailor. I think because of his lack of production, there's a chance that you could get him for cheaper than he should probably go for based on what the film is. And Nailor feels like a hidden secret. Maybe you get him to like a 3-year, $30 million deal. Something like that. And that would rule because Nailor's really emerged as a talented third option on your football team. Maybe you just give him a 1-year deal for like $10 or $15 million. Garrett Wilson, I'm not going to say he's untouchable, but I think he's untouchable with the Jets. I think that's one guy they don't want to trade. And With Addison, if I'm on an island, I think I'm okay with that. I think that he is worth keeping around. He is worth paying. And even if you don't believe Addison is worth the money, teams treat Justin Jefferson differently when Addison is on the field versus when he's off. And that alone is arguably the biggest reason why you should keep Addison, because he's great for Justin Jefferson. Now,
and vice versa.
Yeah. Like, having one great wide receiver is awesome, but if they double and triple team him and nobody can pick up the slack, what does it matter? Right. It doesn't matter a whole lot. The whole goal is to make things as easy as possible for Jefferson. And in turn, Jefferson makes things easier for the other guy because they're going to see one-on-one coverage. They're not going to see the top cornerback. The real solution is you should double him with Jefferson with your CB2 and a safety and have your CB1 on Addison, because, Addison's going to be a single covered. Let's have my top guy on him. But that's often not how things end up happening. Yeah. Addison's going to be a divisive one for people because of the off the field stuff. And people are going to see it differently. Personally, I think he's a 23-year-old who's made a couple mistakes. They're not good, but we're also not talking mistakes that are like, hey, like, we're not talking domestic violence. We're not talking like something with a weapon. We're talking stupid things a 23-year-old would do. Just stupid things. Hopefully we can get him fit.
Says but he thinks Addison wants a big contract. I agree with you, Graphic X. I think he does want a big contract. Whether he will get it or not is a different story.
Yeah. I think something like a 3-year $75 to $85 million deal is what makes sense for Addison. Jamison Williams, who I think is a worse player than Jordan Addison, got 3 years, $84 million. But like I said, that got spread out over the course of 5 years. 5 years. That's a big deal when it comes to the salary cap. Because remember, he's on the last year of his rookie deal. His 5th-year option is $17.58 million. And then after that, then you get into the big numbers. Well, you can spread out the money enough to limit the big numbers. And then by the time he gets to like those biggest numbers, he'll be like 28 years old, and you can extend him again to continue the process. Assuming he, is grown enough to where you want to keep him that long term. But the Addison discussion, I think, will keep going on. I think we're going to learn more and more over the course of the next few months. In the meantime, the one thing that I found interesting is what Cohn talked about with a trade. Here's how he framed it. So I wasn't 100% sure how he kind of was going about it. They could probably get him for like maybe a second, maybe a third, maybe Ricky Pearsall, maybe Ricky Pearsall and a fourth. It sounds like he was just kind of throwing different compensations out there. I personally wouldn't trade Addison for anything less than a first-round pick. I think he's that good of a football player. And if he would have had a similar season to what he had in 23 and 24 and 25, I think the entire chat would be feeling the same way. Biggs is like Tyler and like TJ Hawkinson because they were brothers from another mother. No, I just think people are underrating Hawkinson because he had to be used differently this year and his production suffered because of it. His production didn't suffer because he was bad. His production suffered because the offense needed him to be different. That's not his fault.
And throw in the quarterback play.
Everybody's production went down because of the bad quarterback play. So I'll leave it at this. I don't think you trade Addison for anything less than a first. I don't think it's worth having a discussion if it's anything less than a first. And if the Vikings traded him for like a second and a fifth or something, oh man, I would be livid. And
yeah, but what if they got players and thrown in with that?
Sure. Who's going to be worth it to make you not take a first round pick and take a second? That would be where I would need to know who the player is. I like Pearsall. I like him a lot. He's hurt. He's been hurt more in his first 2 years than JJ McCarthy. And I'm not making fun of McCarthy.
Injury prone. He'd fit perfectly.
Hey, I like Pearsall a lot. Go Gators, baby. But yeah, that to me is a. What do you get out of there? I don't know what you're doing, but I don't like you over there, bud. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a tough one.
Goblin Graphic ask, does it matter if it's a 2027 first? 2027 is to be a better draft year.
Yeah. So I'm going to say this when it comes to stop. I don't know why you're chewing on things. I don't like that. You want 2027 draft picks. So does everybody else. I think it's going to be really hard to get anybody to trade 2027 draft picks because everybody knows that class is projected to be way better than this one. So why, if you know that, they know that too. And I don't think teams are going to be willing to make those trades, even though we want them. So that's kind of where I sit on that. If you can get somebody to trade 2027 capital, nice work. But unless it comes to
one that I've seen quite a bit, a second and Mac Jones.
No, absolutely not. But I will say this comes from me wanting nothing to do with Mac Jones. I'll be 100% honest with that. I don't want Mac Jones. I don't think he's that good. I don't think he's worth acquiring for the draft capital you'd have to give. 2, I also don't think that the 49ers are going to be willing to trade Mac Jones. They have him on a nothing contract, and he saved their season. They said, we're not actively trying to trade good players. Now, that does not include Brandon Ayuk, but that's a different conversation. So I want nothing to do with Mac Jones. Somebody mentioned that to me on Twitter, and I'm just like, good value. Don't want Mac Jones. And I'm going to be pretty steadfast about that. I don't want him. I want nothing to do with him. And that's fine. The value's decent. I just don't want Mac Jones. So for me, it'd be a no. Now, before we get on to this mock draft, Dave, I think we should update the people on what we got coming with SKOL Search. We have 2 episodes in the can that Dave is working on. I am going to be recording 2 to 3 more over the course of the next few days before I head to Mobile for the Senior Bowl.
I was about to say, why? Because you're heading to Mobile.
Yes, I am. That also means our schedule might be a little different. This is why I always say you should like, subscribe, and ring the bell for those notifications. We will not have a live show on Monday. We will have something for you, whether that be a SKOL Search, whether that be a recorded show. We need to figure that out, Dave and I. But there will not be a live show on Monday. We will see about doing live shows, maybe Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday. We need to figure that out, and I need to kind of figure out the practice schedule. Time will not be at 6 o'clock. It will be later. This is why, like, subscribe, ring the bell for those notifications. When we figure it out, we may figure it out a couple hours beforehand, and Dave and I talk throughout the day, and I say, hey, let's go at 8, and then we go. So we may not have time to even promote it with you. And that's not something I like to do, but it's something that we kind of have to do with the uniqueness of the Senior Bowl. And last couple of years, I sat outside at my Airbnb and we shot it, and we had a lot of fun talking Senior Bowl stuff. So you'll want to stick around. You'll want to watch those. And I think it'll be fun, Dave, but it's going to be an odd week for content from us from a video perspective. I'll post a lot in the community tab so you guys can kind of keep track of what's going on. But it could be an odd one for us when it comes to live videos. So maybe this might be where we just give you a bunch of SKOL searches and then that's it, because I won't have time to like sit and do a live show just because it's a little weird. They move practices back. They're not at like 10 anymore. They start at like 1.
Really?
And they go until like 6. Yeah. I kind of like that because, you know me, I'm a night owl, but
is it because they changed the promotion from Reese's to Panini?
Well, I don't know why they changed promoters. Panini's been involved with them for a while, but they do have a new Senior Bowl director. His name is Drew. I can't remember how to pronounce his last name, but I think it's like Fagenbach or something like that. He's a former longtime scout. Jim Nagy went to Thank you, John. Thank you. The time is here to build it back up, and we're going to do that here in a mock draft in a second. But having a new Senior Bowl director and Jim Nagy moving on to Oklahoma, that I think was a big reason why this is ended up becoming a thing. We'll answer this from cause and effect, and then we'll move on. Anthony, we'll get to your super chat here when we talk mock draft. Why are people running from the Browns job? Why wouldn't you run from the Browns job? Like, I feel like Kevin Stefanski got sandbagged hard for the job he did. And if he really had nothing to do with the Deshaun Watson thing, he should still be the head coach. That's a damn good football coach. He got blood from a stone with that offense at times. It wasn't good, but look at who he had to work with.
And that's a shame because that whole upper Ohio Valley is traditionally rich in football. Whether it be from Pittsburgh to Cleveland to Cincinnati, the whole works. And to have a team mismanaged, and it's all due to the owners, in my opinion. It's a shame.
Yeah. It's a damn shame. All right, Dave. I know you got the roll in. Fire it up.
Okay, here we go. Welcome to Vikings First and SKOL's Mock Draft Mondays. Who will the Vikings pick? And who's your favorite choice?
Boom. We have the simulator up and ready to go. I want to answer Anthony's question about Senior Bowl guys to watch. Well, I was going to say D'Angelo Pons because he, got announced earlier this morning, but he's apparently not going anymore, which boo. I'm excited to see Will Lee. So the national team has a lot of corners I really like. Will Lee III from Texas A&M, Chandler Rivers from Duke, Chris Johnson from San Diego State, Colton Hood from Tennessee. I want to see safeties are interesting too. Zakee Wheatley is a super athlete. Bud Clark from TCU. I believe he started his career at Alabama. I'm pulling up the American right now. There's some interesting players in the American team. Dalen Everett, the cornerback from Georgia. Dakario Davis from Washington. Julian Neal from Arkansas. Keontae Scott from Miami. Davison Igbinosun from Ohio State is going to be one to watch. This is a height, weight, speed guy. Big time height, weight, speed guy. And those tools are going to be something that teams are going to love. They love height, weight, speed guys. But you know me. I love the small guys, the guys who want to punch you in the mouth and step over you like they're Allen Iverson in the NBA Finals. If you know, you know. Kamari Ramsey from USC is going to be there. AJ Halsey from LSU. Genesis Smith from Arizona. The people that I respect most in this business love Genesis Smith. And Jalen Kilgore from South Carolina. There's some really interesting players at those positions. So we're going to do a 3-round mock draft. The idea of this 3-round mock draft, because of the Brian Flores commitment to return, is going to be focused on day one players, guys who can contribute. One of the things we keep talking about this team is the Vikings don't have youth at corner. They don't have youth at corner. They don't have youth at corner. I think the reason they don't have youth at corner is because Brian Flores doesn't want youth at corner. And the last two cornerbacks they've drafted were Mekhi Blackman, who's 23, and Kyrie Jackson, who's 25. They want guys who are veterans, who have played a lot of football, who are smart, because you need to be that to run this scheme. So I think the idea of just a first-round corner might not happen. Should it happen? Look, I'd take Avion Terrell and I'd run. But I love Avion Terrell. If I didn't already max out my cornerbacks on the All Forno team, he would have made it. But I already have my 2 corners. You guys know me. The All Forno team only has 2 players on it from each position max. Because otherwise, I'd just have a bunch of corners and wide receivers, but that's not how that works. So we're going to just do 3 rounds. We're not going to do trades. And we're just going to do players that would be day 1 contributors because the Vikings need to win and they need to win now. So drafting a Dallas Turner who may not be a super strong contributor till midway through year 2 doesn't really make a ton of sense. So that's what we're looking at here. So when you look at the board, you've got offensive linemen. That's a no. There's not going to be an offensive lineman that in the first round that would start right away. You'd have to take a center, and there's no center worthy of that spot. Connor Lew might have been if he had played the whole season and didn't tear his ACL. But alas, he did. So now you're looking at skill players. Denzel Boston's an interesting one. Even if you don't trade Jordan Addison, like you probably are going to lose Jalen Naylor. I would love to keep him, but I think they'll lose him. That's the type of player that you could add, and he gives you something you don't have. An X. This team doesn't have an X. This team doesn't have a guy who has decent yak for his size. He's 6'4", 209 pounds, but he can go up and get the football. He's got this uncanny ability to go up, snatch the ball, bring it down, and keep his body under full control the entire time. He is one of the best jump ball receivers I've ever seen at the college level. And he's got more to his game, and I think there's more nuance you can unlock. I want to see more variety with his releases. I want to see him use his body positioning a little better and turn better when it comes to breaking routes. But he also has a punt return touchdown. He's a good football player. Kenyon Sadiq is one, but I don't see tight ends as day 1 contributors unless you're super special. Kyle Pitts, Brock Bowers.
Yeah, but Kyle Pitts even wasn't.
Oh, he was as a rookie. He caught like 70 passes for over 1,000 yards as a rookie. It was the next 3 years that looked bad.
Okay.
But Brock Bowers is super special as a rookie. So I don't know about that. One guy I want to talk about as we kind of look here. So there's if you're looking for day 1 contributors, CJ Allen, who Dave and I just recorded a SKOL Search talking linebackers. Was a big fan of Allen. Casey Concepcion. If you move on from Jordan Addison, guess what? I introduced you Jordan Addison. It's not a direct comparison. He's a little bigger. He's 5'11", 190 pounds. So he's got a little bit more of a frame, but he's explosive. He's bursty. He's twitchy. He runs really nice routes. He understands space incredibly well, attacks holes in zone. I haven't watched Mekhi Lemon yet. That's on my list for tonight after the wife goes to bed. He's my wide receiver 2 right now. I love what Concepcion does, and he's great with the ball in his hands, something the Minnesota Vikings desperately need. He's got 15.1 yards per reception with a bad quarterback in Marcel Reed. Look, the idea Marcel Reed rules, he's not very good. So
now, where else can you get this sort of scouting when Tyler waits till his wife goes to bed to watch this stuff, to get more in? Only here on Vikings First and SKOL.
Damn right. I'm usually working all the time. I love this. And then this summer, I'm going to a Blue Bombers game, damn it. I cannot wait. That's going to be a fun trip to Winnipeg. So you want a day 1 contributor? Casey Concepcion. Do you need a wide receiver? Not at this exact moment. Will you get a good wide receiver? Yeah. Take one. And you can use him as a what do you say? You can use him as a like a gadget guy. You can use him as a you can use him in the Jalen Naylor role. You can use him in the Jordan Addison role. My brain went kaput there for a second, Dave. Probably because I'm about to cook a steak here in a little bit. And I can't wait.
You're hungry.
Oh, yes, I am. All right, round 2. We took a wide receiver. And
now
probably means you're not taking. Yep.
Why does it remind me of Dave Concepcion?
Probably because they have the same last name.
Probably. And Dave played for Cincinnati Redlegs when I was growing up. So, anyways. Shortstop. Of course.
All right. Now, let's have a conversation about these guys. I apologize. I can't get the screen to be a little bigger, but at least we have it on the screen. Okay. So let's talk about some of these guys. Zion Young, rotational pass rusher. We're looking for day one guys. So I think an edge rusher is probably a no. LT Overton, maybe because you could kick him inside, because LT Overton, he a big boy. Dave, he's a big boy. I think he's 6'2", 280 pounds. 6'5", 278. That's a guy you can kick inside. That guy is bigger than Tyrion Ingram Dawkins. So you could potentially do that. Looking at all of these, it makes a lot of sense. Keontae Scott, if you want a cornerback, but I don't think a cornerback is going to play early in this system. So kind of looking, Ahmed Moten would be a good one. I don't think he announced that he's returning to Miami. I think he wants to win a national title, which nobody can blame him. I do know who Dave Concepcion is. I might only be 36, but I know things. D'Angelo Pons, I know Anthony's been talking about him. I love Pons. He is on the All Forno team, by the way. 5'9", 178 pounds, and he'll punch you in the mouth and ask for breakfast. This dude rules. But cornerback, like I said, day one contributor, and Pons is a true junior. So we're not even talking about a guy who's like 24, which would match like Mekhi Blackman and Kyrie Jackson. So I'm a no on Pons for this exercise. I love Pons, don't get me wrong. But what I'm going to do is Emmanuel McNeil-Warren. He's a multi-year starter for Toledo, senior, 6'2", 202 pounds, and this dude can absolutely play. He is a safety. You can use him over the top. He is physical in run coverage.
How tall is he again?
He's 6'2".
Okay.
I'm not going to sit here and tell you that he's Harrison Smith. Anybody who would do that is just stupid. But I think he has the aptitude to play the same role that Harrison Smith does. And with Harrison Smith likely gone, which I love Harrison Smith, I think his send-off against Green Bay and the Lions was perfect.
But hopefully with B-Flow signing the extension, it might change his mind. We'll get one more year.
It's very possible. We've got somebody spamming the Discord right now. Oh, sorry, that's my bad. I am there we go. That's better. I just had to ban somebody from the Discord, which you all should join. Just don't spam. Don't spam or use bad words. Somebody used the R word and I had to ban them for it. We don't do that kind of stuff. But with draft season coming up and me being in the Senior Bowl, all members of the YouTube channel get access to the Rumor Mill channel, where I will spill all the good stuff that I hear. And you only get that if you're a YouTube member in our Discord. So it links. Just ask Biggs, ask Jason, ask Chuck. It's super easy to link up. And you'll get a bunch of good stuff. So anyways, McNeil-Warren, you need safety help. I think this is a guy that could be a day one starter. And safety is a position you could be a day one starter in the NFL. So this is a guy I think who would be able to contribute right away. So we're going to take him. We're going to take McNeil-Warren at 49. And now we're at pick 82. And this is the exact spot I would like to take a running back. I also am worried the Vikings won't take a running back, because as good as these coaches are, I'm really starting to get concerned, Dave, that they don't want to develop. That they just want to play veterans and they don't want to have the patience to develop. Because running back, they haven't been willing to take anybody with any kind of real draft capital. They haven't taken one in 2 years. They didn't take one in last year's class, which was so absurdly loaded with talent that you'd think, oh, it's a foregone conclusion that they're going to take one. Nope. I'm worried that they won't want to take one. We'll see. They haven't been willing to take cornerback either with under Brian Flores, just 2. And those guys were 23 and 25. So I'm a little concerned there, but I think Jonah Coleman makes a ton of sense, because he is like, if Aaron Jones, but if you add 20 pounds,
How tall is he?
He's 5'9", 228.
You know, I have prejudice against people under 6 feet in the NFL.
I mean, Aaron Jones is 5'9".
Like I said, I have prejudice against any player in the NFL under 6 feet, unless they're a kicker.
Running back, to me, I don't mind you being a little smaller. I also don't think 5'9" is a debilitating kind of height. It's not like Darren Sproles is 5'6", Deuce Vaughn was 5'5". I loved Deuce Vaughn. It just hasn't worked. But Coleman, he plays the game much bigger. He's got really quick and nimble feet. He's got that burst. He doesn't have long speed. Like, he's going to hit a 40-yarder. He's not going to hit a 80-yarder. And that's why you're getting him in round 3. But I do think with his aptitude as a receiver, his aptitude as a pass blocker, this is a guy who could be a day one contributor for you. And when you look at the rest of the board, you're looking at offensive linemen, not day one contributors. Zachariah Branch, well, we already took a wide receiver, and he's a gadget-only guy, in my opinion. Chris, Darren Sproles looked 4'11". He was 5'6", and he was like 215 pounds. Beef. Chase Basantis is an interesting one. Not a day one contributor kind of guy for what this team is, but a very good player. So we're going to take Jonah Coleman, because I think when you talk about guys who are going to play right away, with how this coaching staff has played, he's the most likely one in round 3. Whereas corner, maybe not, because of what we've seen Brian Flores do at the position. But it's a tough one, because I'm trying to look at these players from the lens of what the Vikings would believe, and not necessarily what I believe. And that can sometimes be difficult to parse out, because, hey, sometimes I am way more bullish on a guy than the team, or they're way more bullish on a guy than I am. And sometimes they're right, sometimes I'm right. You know what I mean? It can be difficult to think in the mind of somebody else, but that's the exercise we're trying to do here. Like I said, Genesis Smith, this dude rules. We did already take a safety, so we're not going to take him. Would not shock me if Genesis Smith ends up being like a second round pick. This dude is awesome. I think kind of looking here, there aren't a ton of day one type of contributors here. And I mean, you're at 97th overall. It's not really that big of a surprise where you're just not seeing that guy. Carson Beck at 94th overall is very funny. I have not heard good things about Carson Beck. And when you watch him in the national championship game, the dude's arm is like jello. Like, no. So this guy is interesting to me. Mikhail Kamara, 6'1", 262. He's more of a traditional edge rusher, like a 4-3 instead of a 3-4, because Brian Flores really likes his guys to be able to drop, and I don't know if Kamara's kind of got that in him. But looking back, I think this might be where they actually will be willing to take a corner, because this is kind of the sweet spot, Dave, where they've historically taken corners with Kwesi Adofo-Mensah. They have taken 3 corners between 100 and 130 overall in his tenure. The only cornerback taken outside of that range was Andrew Booth Jr. at 42nd. So when I take a look at the options, I'm trying to find a guy who's really intelligent.
Jackson,
he was 108th.
Oh, okay.
Mekhi Blackman was 102, and Caleb Evans, I believe, is 128. Anthony says Prince for running back. Well, we're not taking a running back. We just took Coleman. We're not going to take 2. So I think when you look at it from day one contributor, I think the only one who's have a chance, it's between one of 2 guys. Xavier Scott, Illinois, 5'11", 195. He's a multi-year starter at Illinois. 25. He didn't play that many snaps because he got hurt. He only played in the 3 games, but he was very, very good in 24. You can kind of see the numbers. Really good ball skills, but the injury is probably why he's at this spot, because somebody I really respect, Connor Rogers of NBC, and he does PFF's NFL Stock Exchange with Trevor Sikkema. This dude can ball, and Connor loves him. And there aren't many people I respect more than Connor Rogers in this business. Not only is he really good at his job, really nice guy. So But I'm going to go Will Lee. This is the guy that you're going to get on a SKOL search here pretty quick. 6'1", 189 pounds. Some people see him as more of a man corner. I think he's a zone guy. He's a little taller. He's longer. He's got fluid hips to carry upfield. He's got really good ability to click and close, and he attacks the football when he gets there. But one of the big things for me with Lee, I don't think he's that great in man coverage. And quite frankly, with how they run this scheme, he doesn't need to be that great in man coverage. He's solid enough where you can do a lot of man match principles. You can do those kind of things, but he's got fluid hips and he's got the ability to put his foot in the ground and attack. So Will Lee is going to be my guy. And this is a group where I think realistically, this group can play for you day one. And I think this group playing for you day one is the most important thing, because I think that's going to be a big priority for what this team is going to look for. Brian says O-line could be day one. Darrisaw's not healthy. I think the Darrisaw stuff's being overblown. Unless they come out and say that he re-injured his knee and needs to go through rehab again, I think he's going to be just fine for mini camp, let alone like training camp or the start of the season. I think this past year, a lot of people made mistakes, and I think Darrisaw is included in that. But I don't think we have to worry about him long term. Now, we may get information that says, hey, that could change, but I'm not worried about Darrisaw. So I'm not too worried about tackle. I think we'll get a backup tackle at some point. I think we'll probably take offensive tackle at some point in the draft. I'm guessing it'll be day 3. I don't like this offensive line class very much. If we took a day 1 offensive tackle, I would be very upset unless they traded Brian O'Neill or something. But
which I don't see happening.
I think he gets extended. I think it's a 3-year deal worth about $60 million. That's my guess.
Yeah.
I might write about that tonight just because I'm bored. The Pit is back tonight. Wife and I love The Pit. That's one of the best shows I've ever seen in my life. So that is it. That is our 3-round mock draft, talking specifically about players who would start day 1. And Dave, I think I would have liked to have had a defensive tackle in there, but you have to have a defensive tackle worthy of being selected at that spot. That to me is the problem. Zachary in the comments says middle linebacker for sure at some point. Yes, I would love linebacker in the first round. CJ Allen was a serious consideration there. If Sonny Styles makes it to 18, I run. I sprint to the front. I would consider trading a 3rd round pick to move up like 4 spots to go get Sonny Styles. I love him. I think he's a great football player.
And that will be the next SKOL search that comes out.
Yep. That, and then we've got the wide receiver episode as well already in the bank. I've got some corners. I've got more wide receivers. You're going to get a lot of wide receivers because I'm in charge of writing those profiles. So when I write those profiles, I then just do a SKOL search on top of that. So we're going to get a lot of that stuff. I'm going to have a bunch for Dave, and we may just air a SKOL search for everybody in lieu of an episode on Monday. We'll figure all that out. We'll let you know what's going on, but it'll be a little different for Senior Bowl week. And then, hey, maybe Saturday, Dave and I will whip something up. We got to figure all that out. But when we figure it out, we will relay it to you. And that is our show tonight. 2-0 Bloggers on Sunday before the game.
11 a.m. Central.
11 a.m. And then we'll have...
If I don't get knocked out of power or internet due to the storm.
That would be bad to lose power, especially with it being so cold in championship weekend. But we'll be back. We will be ready to rock and roll for you guys. And make sure you like, subscribe, ring the bell, because we're going to have a different schedule this week. Thank you so much for joining. I'm Tyler. He's Dave. SKOL Vikings.
SKOL Vikings. Like, subscribe, and ring the bell to get notifications. It helps us grow this community that we all love, our Minnesota Vikings. And on behalf of Tyler Forness and myself, Dave Stefano, thank you so dearly for watching The Real Forno Show. SKOL, everyone!